It wasn't easy for you to learn how to use this body. It took you many, many months and years of trial and error. And you can see that as a child is growing, it takes a lot of effort to learn how to walk. Recently, someone I know had a stroke, and they suddenly noticed how heavy their forearm was. That this like 20 pounds of weight, I'm not sure the exact weight, but it's actually quite heavy. It's not that their muscles deteriorated, it's their nervous system. The nervous system connections going all the way through into the arm had deteriorated, so all of a sudden they became aware again that this is quite a bit of weight that you have to learn how to maneuver and lift and manipulate, especially when it comes to your hands, okay? Because they're quite dexterous. Getting all that sort of functionality back. Now, as someone who had a stroke and they are relearning to gain back the functionality that they already had. But when you are a child, when you're a baby coming into this world, if you look at a baby right after they're born and then the first couple of weeks, they don't actually know that this is their hand. They don't know that this is their body. And when I say they, I mean you. When you came into this, you didn't really know that this was your body, this is your hand. Eventually, you found out, oh, this belongs to me, and you had some slight control over it, and that control level grew and grew. That proprioception level, that internal sense of where my body is in relation to other parts of me, that grew. In John Mew's cell volition theory, which is at the core of orthotropics really, is that the cells of the body know where to go. They need the proper signaling, however, in order to reach their position properly. If they don't get that proper signaling, they end up in a different location than where their blueprint is. You can think of it like a blueprint for a house or, say, a map of a city, where if you have a really well laid out map where everything's been tried and tested and understood and all the checkpoints have been marked, that cell, that's your bone cell, fascial cells, everything, they're going to get to where they need to go in their development. However, if the map hasn't been fully developed, there's areas of the city that are unexplored. Well, the cell might get kind of lost. They might end up not quite where it's supposed to go. It might see other cells that are similar and it kind of lodges itself, and you end up essentially in the position of a body that is fully developed. All the cells are there, but they're not quite in the right positions. That's a poor posture and that's a poor craniofacial development, and that reflects throughout the rest of the body, throughout the rest of the organs and the cells too. Now, in the best developed people, and the examples of the best developed people are almost always going to be those who live in pre-agriculture, pre-industrialized environments, more so anyone who is living with a high degree of contact with the ground, usually barefoot for a large period of their life, usually like I'm not talking on an individual basis. I'm talking when you see entire segments of populations. You'll have like an entire tribe or an entire region of the planet where the groups of people, they don't have crooked teeth, they don't have wisdom teeth issues, they don't have nasomaxillary issues, sleep apnea, they don't have postural issues, like everything develops properly for the vast majority of their life. And these are people who from childhood on up, and you might be thinking of a jungle when I say this, but like, in Japan, even they do encourage children to go barefoot in their kindergartens. All right. So there is wisdom across the world about this sort of thing. The proprioception level, the internal sensory level of the person, the internal map has to be built. It doesn't come for free, it has to be built. You can see that when you see an infant and one who's learning to walk through the whole development cycle. It's not easy to use this body. I've just recently started learning how to ride a motorcycle, and that takes muscle memory. That's a clutch and a couple of levers. The complexity level that you're dealing with when it comes to moving the body is orders and orders and orders of magnitude higher in complexity. And it is very hard to learn how to use this body properly, to learn where all the parts go. And a lot of us Well, if you're watching this video, you're probably not one of those people. You're probably one of the people that understood something's gone wrong with development, not only my own development, but in humans in general. But the vast majority of the population thinks that everyone just learns to use their body, even if you didn't use it, even if you were in a sedentary lifestyle, spent most of your classroom days, sitting around, video games, computers, the post-industrialized type of lifestyle, tight shoes at all, not being in nature enough, not enough visual stimulation, because this would require all of your sensory inputs, not just the touch inputs, because the touch inputs would be things like walking, hands, barefoot, the touch sensory input, but also things like hearing, vision. All of this has to be really well developed for your internal proprioceptive sense to build up such that your body can understand where it is in its development, where things are in relation to each other, and develop itself properly. When it doesn't have a good map, it stays basically in that flight or flight type of situation. It can't really fully relax. To rebuild this internal sense of proprioception is what we'll get to in a moment. I wanted to speak about athletes as well. So people might say, well, maybe how come Olympic athletes, in that case, people who have been training their bodies their entire lives, aren't examples of people that are 100% of the time the best developed? Well, those people are typically better developed. Typically, they are better developed, but training for a specific sport is not necessarily using the body in the holistic way that it would have been used in nature, in hunter-gatherer type of situations. Okay, there's a certain holistic. Again, I'm not just speaking moving the body and contacting. I'm speaking about the way that you use your eyes, the way that you use all of your sensory inputs, and feel yourself in relation to the world around you. That has to be built up, and that builds your internal map. Now, for all of us, we do have internal sensation. The fascia running through your body is almost as sensitive as on your skin. So you can tap here. Let's be honest. Right now, you weren't really aware of the outside of your forearm. It existed, but you weren't really aware of it. Even right now, pay attention to it, and you can probably pick up some sensation. And I want you to rub it, tap it, stretch it. These are all proprioceptive actions that the nerves pick up on. Okay? So, okay, on the outside of the body, we have more sensation because those are the parts that typically get touched. This is why things like tapping work. It wakes up this body. It's a mind-body connection. We get more into that as we go through whole body breathing. It's quite holistic. We cover everything. Now, what I want you to do is pay attention to your breathing in your chest. There's actually a lot of sense perception in the chest. The entire inside of your body is almost 70% as perceptive as the skin outside. Okay, so paying attention, there's actually a physical sensation going on. There's actually physical expansion. Breathe into your chest and feel on the inside of the chest. Realize that it's not just the front of your chest that moves. You have rib cage going under your armpits and then around to your back as well. Your entire thorax expanding on the inhale. When someone has a heart attack, all of a sudden they realize that they can feel inside of here. But that sensory perception is always available. You just numb to it. So if you want advanced level correction as an adult, or to get to your blueprint levels as you're growing, and say you're a teenager, you're gonna have to put in that work that normally would have happened if you were in like pre-agriculture human societies. It not only would have happened by you doing it, but you would have had the mirror neurons. You would have seen adults who already developed properly. You would have seen the way they walk, the way they behave, and you would have picked up on that automatically. Okay. And you would have automatically learned a lot of this as well. But if you're further along in your development and something's gone incorrect with your development, or you want to ensure it goes all the way correct, the level of work that you see a toddler putting in when they're learning to walk or learning to use their arms and hands, it's constant. It's all the time. They're learning to use it again. That's what has to be done in order to rebuild the internal proprioceptive map of the body. As you're listening to me, did you continue feeling the expansion in your chest? I want you to go back to that. There's a lot of sensation in there. That sensation is going to tell you where you're tight, where things are out of order, where things are tilted and rotated, where they shouldn't be. You might notice correlations between the tightness in your chest, your abdomen, and asymmetries in your skull. You're going to feel that through the neck. In virtually every school of ancient body correction, mind correction, spiritual correction, the breath has been the doorway into the subconscious, into the body, into the spirit, so that you can find out what's going on. It's your diagnostic tool and it's also your correction tool. That is why you see in monasteries where you have the, say, the Shaolin monks, they have a very holistic way of doing the entire body plus the mind, because the mind body are one, it's psychosomatic, and they are well developed. So the two options are, you can either go back out into the forest, into the jungle, start living that sort of lifestyle, and let your body learn again how it's supposed to move, how it's supposed to function. The alternative lifestyle is something like a monk mode, where you so far discipline yourself, doesn't even have to be in a monastery, where you so far discipline yourself to go inside and see what's happening internally and begin fixing it. Ideally, you want a combination of the two, and ideally during both combinations, you want to be doing whole body breathing. Because this sensation that's in your chest, you're going to notice that it radiates into your neck. As your neck musculature activates, it's going to pull your head slightly back. It's going to have a slight effect on your jaw as well. You have to close your eyes now because there's a lot of sensory information coming in from your eyes. You want to close off to that sensory information so you can focus on the sensory information from your internal proprioception. This will give you the information that you need to understand where your body is, where it's twisted. And I want to say how to correct it, but the intelligence that built this body is way beyond your intellectual capacity. So correcting it will also be beyond your intellectual capacity. However, you need to give it that time and awareness and space so that it can begin to redevelop itself.